I was going to do this from memory, but it'll be much quicker if I read it, so I hope you don't mind bearing with me while I read. And there's a lot of history about Joppa Cemetery. I have a book about this thick with research, and I knew you didn't want to hear it today. So I limited it to one page to tell you about this historic place. Originally known as Burying Ground Ridge, the area around us today's Joppa Cemetery was settled in the early 1750s. The cemetery is believed to contain the graves of many of those early settlers. The earliest marked grave once was claimed to be that of Squire Boone here to your left. And he died and was buried in January of 1765. It's believed that his son Daniel carved the headstone, which includes many Masonic symbols. Squire's wife Sarah died in 1777, was buried beside him. More recent research confirmed the location of the grave of their oldest son Israel, who died in 1756, and that grave was recently marked by his descendants. I dwell on the Boone graves because many, including historians, believe that people have worked to preserve this cemetery as the final resting place of the parents of Daniel Boone. In 1938, North Carolina Highway marker M3 was first installed here, which said, Daniel Boone's parents, Squire and Sarah Boone, are buried here. Daniel Boone, 1734-1820, lived many years in this region. In addition to the Boone Family Association, this cemetery is connected to the Presbyterian congregation that was originally located here. The first known building at Joppa Cemetery was a small one-room log meeting house, and it's believed to have been in the southeast corner of the cemetery, just inside the old stone wall marking the original cemetery. So that direction would be this corner. First Presbyterian Church of Mocksville traces its founding to this place. The May 1767 minutes of the Synod of Philadelphia, New York, first mentioned a group of worshipers at the meeting house in Joppa Cemetery. There's speculation that a congregation was meeting here as early as 1765, when Squire Boone was buried in this cemetery. The May 1789 Presbyterian church records refer to the church named for the first time as Joppa, which is a biblical word meaning beautiful. A frame church was built in 1793 on the same site as the original log structure. The Joppa church members moved from this country church into the town of Mocksville around 1834, which subsequently became the First Presbyterian Church of Mocksville. In 1951, the Presbyterian Church deeded the cemetery to Joppa Cemetery Incorporated, who is still the owner. There are many unmarked graves in the old part of the cemetery, surrounded by the stone wall. In this area, there are 5 Revolutionary War veterans graves and at least 7 graves of Civil War veterans. There are quite a few veteran graves in the front and the newer part of the cemetery. In 2022, the historic highway sign at the front of the cemetery was replaced due to the previous sign's age and weathering. That sign now reads, Squire and Sarah Boone, parents of frontiersman Daniel Boone, settled in North Carolina circa 1751, received land grant nearby, 1753. Squire died 1765, and Sarah 1777, buried here. This cemetery has also become a popular historical destination for visitors to Mocksville. Many private individuals continue to work and preserve this historic site. I'm going to also give a history of the First Presbyterian Church since they were founded here. But before I do so, if you look to the left of Squire and Sarah Boone's grave, you'll find what's known as a British red ensign. And many would say, wait a minute, that's a British flag? So I'm going to explain that briefly. And most remember Squire and Sarah, who are buried here as the parents of Daniel Boone. Squire migrated, and of course Daniel was with he and his family, to North Carolina in 1750. In 1753, Squire Boone was involved in the establishment of Rowan County and served as one of the first justices of the Colonial Court of Common Pleas for Rowan County from 1753 to 1757. He was also elected to the first vestry of St. Luke's Parish, which represented the Anglicans for the Church of England in the colony of Rowan County, North Carolina. Squire died in 1765, which was 10 years before the beginning of the American Revolution. So he would have been unfamiliar with the stars and stripes that we Americans fly today. One of the patriots we honor today is Basil Gaither, who also served in the colonial government as a justice of the Court of Common Pleas. The flag flown over colonial governmental buildings with which Squire Boone and Basil Gaither would have been familiar was the British red ensign. This is the flag stationed, as I mentioned, at Squire Boone's grave. In January 1776, so almost 1 year after the American Revolution began, George Washington and the Continental Army were encamped around Boston. Washington had the British red ensign flag at Cambridge, so he flew this very same flag. He was raising the flag to show the colonists were still loyal to the king at the time. The flag was modified by adding stripes of white cloth so that it had 13 red and white stripes representing 13 colonies or states. In 1777, the Continental Congress adopted a flag to be used by the now 13 independent states that had 13 red and white stripes, and a constellation of 13 stars on a field of blue in the upper left corner. Now I'm going to quickly move on to the history of the First Presbyterian Church here in Mocksville. And as I mentioned a moment ago,